Let us share the spirit of love.
And let me get my head around what's next.
We got the opening.
Okay. Ready?
For our opening hymn, please rise as you are willing and able and join us in singing number 1040 in the Teal hymnal, Hush. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh, somebody's calling my name. like a freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like a freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Sound like a justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sound like a justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, sound like a justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? Please be seated.
Well, it looks like the parents have kept the kids safely at home today. So I'll include us all in our time for all ages. The book is The Big Umbrella, and it's by June Bates with her daughter, Juniper Bates. By the front door, there is an umbrella. It is big. It is a big, friendly umbrella. It likes to help. It likes to spread its arms wide. It loves to give shelter. It loves to gather people in. It doesn't matter if you are tall. Or hairy. Or plaid. It doesn't matter how many legs you have. Some people worry that there won't be enough room under the big umbrella. But the amazing thing is, there is. There's always room. And let's sing to each other now. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Isn't that a cute book? That's just great. We'll do our offering now. And each week, you support the work of this congregation and all the ways we live our values in the world through your own generosity. In addition to supporting this congregation, 1/2 of your plate donations support a local nonprofit organization, helping us make a difference to the world beyond these walls. If you want your donation to go toward your pledge, write pledge on your check, 100%. Otherwise, half of it will go to our charity. In January and February, half of our plate donations support Heart and Soul, which promotes ethnic and cultural diversity in Loveland. Please contribute generously as we listen to Ryan play Motherless Child. Thank you, Ryan. And thank you for your generosity. We come together each week to share our lives and care for one another. And one of the ways we do this is through joys and sorrows that we can share. If you have a brief personal joy or sorrow, please come forward or raise your hand and I can bring the mic to you. Those of you online can write it in chat and Tam will call it out to us towards the end. And let's respond to each joy or sorrow by just saying, we care for you at their close. So would anybody like to share a joy or sorrow? Yeah, come on up. Vicki. Let me be sure your mic's on.
Thanks. I'm Vicki. We had fun last night. Our firstborn turned 59. I don't know how that happened, but she did. Actually, it doesn't happen till tomorrow, but we just had a fun dinner, family dinner at home. And our son rigged up all the music on his phone from the year she was born. And they sort of went down a memory lane trip of, I remember this. And it was just a lot of fun. And then the flip side of that joy is that while Tom is recovering from his pneumonia, he has learned that he's got some kind of lung disease going on. Never smoked a cigarette in his life. It's scar tissue. We don't know where it came from, but we'll have to keep following that with further CT scans and hope that it doesn't continue. So it's a mystery. So.
We care for you.
Here, I'm going to say try herbs and plants and everything you can do, because whatever they tell you, you can probably do better as far as recovery and doing those exercises, and good luck. And there's a museum, my parents have COVID. They're not here local, but I think we all look forward to getting out. And here in Loveland, I just saw a free exhibit is out. It's called, it's Amy Jo Hosterman's Ceramics, and it's Patterns of Power. And it's over at our museum for the next month for free. So go see it, Patterns of Power. It made me think of you all. I'm looking at it, I'm like, I think those are trees, and there's power lines that she's done very small in the ceramics. Anyway, something interesting to look forward to. Go visit. Nice to see you.
We care for you. Others here? Kim, do we have anybody online? We have 3 online.
Susan Matthews. Testing, can you hear me?
You're not coming through the main speaker.
Okay, so Susan Matthews finally tested negative for her 3rd bout of COVID, and she's ready to join the world again.
Sue,
we care for you.
Sue, we care for you.
Janet Gillette, my favorite podcast, My Favorite Murder, is a true crime comedy podcast that's not always about murder, with Georgia Hardstack and Karen Killigriff donated $30,000 to Planned Parenthood. I guess she donated to them too, right?
Yeah,
right? Okay. And Katie Fox says, we all have COVID at the Fox house.
Oh.
So we as a group, a big collective, we care for you.
And please. This way the people on Zoom can hear.
My joy is that I went to a meeting this last week with the head of Planned Parenthood and the head of Cobalt, and we now have 500 people who are spreading petitions. So if you haven't signed the petition giving women the right to abortion, I am here in the back and I'll be at coffee. So thank you very much for your support.
We care for you. Any others? All right. For all these joys and sorrows, and for those we hold in our hearts unsaid, let us say together again, we care for you.
I'm very excited about what's going to happen next. One of my favorite songs is a song that was recorded by Solomon Burke. It's based on a poem by Maya Angelou, and it challenges everyone with this amazing understanding of the world that we live in by saying, if one of us is chained, none of us are free. Here's Lehne and Ryan.
Well, you better listen, my sisters and brothers. If you do, you can hear there are voices still calling across the years. And they are crying across the ocean. They are crying across the land. And they will till we all understand. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free. Well, there are people that are still in darkness, and they just can't see the light. And if we don't say it's wrong, then that means it's right. We gotta get together with our brothers, gotta show them that we care. Gotta send the message out, send it out loud and clear. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free. Now you know your salvation isn't too hard to find, but none of us can make it on our own. Oh, we got to get together in spirit, heart, and mind, so that the souls are suffering aren't suffering on their own. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. If one of us is chained, none of us are free. And you better listen to what I say. And if you look around, you can see that the world is getting smaller each passing day. And it's time for us to make changes. And it's time for us to realize that the world is getting smaller right before our eyes. None of us is free. None of us is free. None of us is free. One of us are chained. None of us is free. 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 One of us are chained. None of us is free.
Thank you, Lehne, so much. Thank you, Ryan. If you have ever been exposed to Christian theology or tradition somewhere in your spiritual journey, You may have heard of a man known as St. Paul, who, with the exception of Jesus himself, is probably the most famous figure in the history of Christianity. Now, I understand that St. Paul is not normally invited to UU worship services. He does have the reputation for saying regrettable things. But this morning, I'd like to make an exception for this reason. I have found that when you take a closer look at the life of St. Paul, what emerges is a kind of cautionary tale that offers some important advice to anyone interested in trying to change the world. People like you and me. St. Paul lived in Jerusalem in the 1st century AD, during a time when much of the city was under the control of a group of religious zealots who were determined to turn the place into a theocracy. Paul was not just one of these religious zealots, he was their rock star. And he had risen to prominence among his peers because he had a masterful ability at dividing the world into us and them. We are good, they are bad. We are holy, they are profane. We have the truth, they have lies. Over and over again. He knew how to take this message and make it resonate at a very primal level in people. Paul knew how to take this message and use it to fuel a culture war. He was a gifted speaker, and he was able to rise up in people a level of rage and self-righteousness, so much so that they felt they had permission, that they were justified, and maybe they even had the right to dehumanize, to disrespect, to persecute, to incarcerate, and even murder the opposition. But one day, out of the blue, Paul had a conversion experience. As the story goes, he was traveling on the road to Damascus when suddenly he was struck blind and brought to his knees by guilt and self-loathing. The man who had terrorized much of Jerusalem was finally able to see who he was: a religious fraud, a liar, and a bully, driven by greed and the lust for power. And now suddenly Paul is a changed man, and he has a brand new vision. He leaves his old life behind and commits himself to building a new world where everyone is loved and cared for. He planted churches all over the known world with the intention that each would become a beloved community of justice and equity. But almost from the beginning, the churches had problems. The vision of justice and equity quickly gave way to infighting, jealousy, greed, and immorality. So what went wrong? The problem might have had something to do with Paul's conversion experience, because it was incomplete. Yes, he had a new vision and a new cause, but he still looked at the world in terms of us and them. And although he no longer had the power to persecute, incarcerate, or murder those who disagreed with him, still, while he went about the task of spreading the message of justice and equity, he never missed an opportunity to publicly dehumanize or berate anyone who disagreed with him, referring to them as vipers, liars, and frauds. Conversion's experience or not, Paul was still at heart a culture warrior, the kind of person who needs more than just a cause. He needed an enemy. Us and them was embedded in St. Paul, and so it became embedded in the churches he started. And the realization of a beloved community could not take hold because each one of these churches was fruit from the poison tree. About 20 years into his mission, Paul had a moment of truth where he realized that he had been wrong, that his glorious vision had been poisoned by his methods. Frustrated and nearly burned out, but now maybe a little bit wiser, Paul wrote a letter to his church in Greece, which included some heartfelt advice for anyone trying to change the world. This is what he said. If I speak with the tongues of men and angels, but I don't have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have enough faith to move mountains, but I don't have love, I am nothing. If I give away all that I have, if I deliver my body up to be burned for the causes I believe in, but I don't have love, it means nothing. This was a stunning realization for a man like St. Paul, to conclude that you can't change hearts and minds when your efforts are being fueled by the anger or self-righteousness of us and them. Justice work is not a culture war. It's a spiritual task, and it must be driven by love. And what that means to people like you and me is that when we work for justice, no matter how glorious our cause might be, we know that there is something more important than our cause, and that is the worth and dignity of every single person, both the oppressed and the oppressor. If you want to change the hearts of other people, your own heart has to change. The fight for justice and equity is central to our identity as UUs. We are people that want to change the world. But no matter how glorious, no matter how important your cause might be, if love doesn't drive the train, you can lose your way and end up frustrated, cynical, and burned out. I know this is true because it happened to me. On a Sunday morning almost 30 years ago, I was standing in the pulpit of Tobin Park United Methodist Church in El Paso, Texas. And on that morning, I was filled with sadness because when I looked out at the congregation, I was there to say goodbye. Tobin Park was a church with a good heart. Although some people had left over the years because the neighborhood's racial makeup had changed, it was still a congregation of 800 members. Recently, they raised over $1 million to build a gymnasium, which they opened to the public. And every day after school, the gym was brimming with Hispanic children. These were good people. And I was very proud to be their pastor. But the church had a big problem. And the problem was me. They believed that I had betrayed them and violated the vows I had taken. That I had disgraced the church and my profession. All this came about because it had come to the attention of the church that during a counseling session, I had told one of the members that his homosexuality was not going to condemn him to hell. I told him that God loved him just the way that he was. It turned out that this was a sting operation. The man left the counseling session and told the Board of Trustees that I was a queer lover. He then filed charges against me with the Methodist hierarchy, claiming I was unfit for ministry because I had violated the teachings of the United Methodist Church. A trial was held, a real trial. And I was found guilty. And after just 11 short years as a minister, I lost my career, my income, and my reputation. I had never been outspoken in my support for gay rights. I had never protested or carried a sign. For me, it was just a simple act of compassion. But all of that was about to change because I was furious. And I was hurt. And I felt betrayed. And now, for me, gay rights was a culture war. Us and them. When I landed a job in the oil industry and moved our family to Houston, I brought my culture war with me. I joined up with groups who were fighting for gay rights, and when I spoke at their events, I never missed an opportunity to dehumanize or berate the opposition. To add fuel to the fire, my 16-year-old son came out as gay. And now I wasn't just fighting for a cause, I was protecting my own child. I was now in a holy war. Us and them was burning in my veins. I had nothing but contempt for those on the other side of the issue. And the rage and the self-righteousness I felt was positively intoxicating. Going to work each day in the oil industry 30 years ago in Houston, Texas, was kind of like attending the Republican National Convention. Conservative politics was discussed freely out in the open. Republican congressmen regularly stopped by at lunchtime to give us a speech on the importance of fossil fuels and what they were doing to try to eliminate any environmental regulations. There was also no expectation of political correctness. It was not uncommon to hear sexist or racist comments throughout the course of the day. My boss had a particular fondness for homophobic slurs and jokes. Every time I heard one of these comments at a meeting or in the break room, it felt like fingernails across a chalkboard. I was in the belly of the beast. I felt alienated from those around me, and my quiet resentment grew a little stronger every day. There were so many things that I wanted to say, so many times I wanted to scream, but I was afraid to do so because I really needed that job. It was about this time that my 13-year-old daughter was diagnosed with cancer. And we were facing at least a year, maybe 2 years of chemo, and after that, radiation. The prognosis was uncertain. Although I tried to be strong, after a while, I did go into an emotional free fall. I was terrified I was going to lose her. After the chemo treatment, she would be sick for days. And I couldn't sleep, I couldn't focus, and worst of all, when I got to work, I couldn't do the job. Everything was starting to fall apart all around me. I think one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do was to go to my boss and tell him what was going on. He listened while I told him that I couldn't focus and I couldn't do my work. And as I spoke, I was also thinking about how much I really dislike this man. Maybe now I could unleash my culture war on him and tell him how I really felt. But sometimes we can find inspiration in unexpected places. When I finished telling him, I sat quietly for a moment, waiting to hear just what would come out of that bigoted mouth of his. And what a surprise. He told me how sorry he was that my family was going through such a difficult time. He told me that he was prepared to do whatever it would take to get me through this. He told me I could make my own hours and work from home, come and go as I needed to. He told me that he and the rest of the people in the department would take care of me. And together, we would get to the other side. During the next couple of years, I experienced an outpouring of kindness and compassion, the kind of which I had never seen before. And when my daughter was finally cancer-free, they threw her a party to celebrate. Somewhere during those 2 years, the culture war inside of me began to soften. The anger and self-righteousness began to fade. The us and them that had been so important to me no longer made sense. I never changed the heart of a single person that I worked with, but they changed my heart. If I speak with the tongues of men and angels and have not love, I am nothing but a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I sell everything I have and give the money to the poor, if I don't have love, I am nothing. I have continued to work for that day when everyone will finally love and respect the LBGT community. But my spiritual path is to learn how to love those who don't. We can't change hearts and minds when our efforts are fueled by the anger or self-righteousness of us and them. Justice work is not a culture war. It's a spiritual task, and it must be driven by love. No matter how glorious our cause may be, there is something more important: the worth and dignity of every human being, both the oppressed and the oppressor. If we want to change the hearts of other people, our hearts must change as well. May it be so. For our closing hymn, please rise as you are willing and able as we join together in hymn number 134, Our World is One World. Thank you for being here this morning, and won't you join us in Fellowship Hall for coffee afterwards? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. May it be so. Almost couldn't get through it there. I promised myself I wouldn't. Wow.
We needed to hear that.
You got your wife.
Oh.
We're gonna take Ryan.
Huh?
We're gonna take Ryan home.
Okay.
Oh my God. When's the next time you wanna get up there?
I'm so glad it was hard to get through it. Oh, are you? Okay. Oh, we have some things to talk about. We do. Okay. Sure.